welcome everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Catherine Jordan, Second District Council Representative. This is our district meeting. If you haven't gotten the agenda, they're at the front table. We also have some water if everybody's thirsty. And as a reminder, we do record all of our meetings and put them on YouTube so that if you want to watch this later, that's where you can find all of these meetings. If you think there's something interesting you want to share with a neighbor or a friend, please let them know that's where they can find this information. So our first guest is Alexis Earhart with VCU. Alexis, thank you so much for being here today to share just the latest from our neighbor, our good steward at the university.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you. I was just telling Mike, I've been at VCU now for 8 months. So any questions, I'm going to refer to other colleagues and say, oh, I am new, I don't know. No, but I'm really excited to be here. I have the pleasure of serving as the Vice President for Government Relations at VCU. So we have in our portfolio federal, state, and local relations. So we have the pleasure of working with Councilwoman Jordan and Sven and all the members of council and the mayor's office, of course. And it's been a real pleasure for me to be in the role since December. We also have, some of you may know or have seen at these meetings, we share a colleague with our Division of Community Engagement, and that's Verona Cobs, who could not be here with us tonight. She is in class this evening pursuing her doctorate, but I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to meet her another time if you haven't. She really focuses on local relations, and then of course on the community engagement side, working a lot within neighborhood and civic associations as well. So our job really at VCU is to think about kind of our strategy at each level, and certainly at the local level. I just want to mention a couple of things that I think will be of interest to you all here tonight, and then if you have questions, again, happy to answer those. So the first thing I'll talk about are the two big capital projects that you are probably looking at every day as you go through the district. The first is the CoStar Center for the Arts on Broad Street. And the update I received is a positive one. Did not know these existed, but the glass and metal panel envelopes are starting installations. I think it's going to start to look like a real building and not just the paper covering. That should be completed in October. So that project is on track to be complete by the end of next year, 27. So we couldn't be more excited about that building and the opportunity really to showcase the talents of our students and faculty at VCU. The other one, of course, is the West Grace Housing Project. That one, the power lines are soon going to be moved underground. So that's moving forward, which I think is really exciting. And the work that's on the elevator that they're doing overnight should be complete in the next 3 weeks. So that is good news. Foundations are being put in also at the dorm space. And so that should be complete at the end of the fall 28 semester. So still a ways to go on that project, but I think that adds another about 1,000 beds for us to hopefully help with the student housing challenges. I've also been authorized by real estate to say explicitly, because that is a common misperception, that when we talk about one VCU, we don't mean that physically. We are not talking about buying all the property between Monroe Park campus and the health system. It really is more, in theory, we are one VCU. In practice of how we work as one team between the health system and the university. So I want to assure everyone we're not on a spree. We want to make really strategic, intentional real estate purchases and then use those buildings for things that are win-win for the community and for VCU. So just want to say that explicitly tonight, because I know that's a common question that we get and that has come up. A couple of other areas of collaboration. We work really closely, obviously, VCU PD with the Richmond PD, talking a lot about pedestrian safety right now, and we'll work on some legislation together for the next session to improve pedestrian safety, not only on the Monroe Park campus, but again, at the health system as well. We also work closely, of course, with student affairs and thinking about move-in, move-out, which I know is of interest, I would say, to this group, and I'll give you some dates here in a moment. And then, of course, with community engagement. So when it comes to our students and move in and move out, our student affairs department tries to work very closely with students who are living not only in campus housing but off campus, so that they can be the best neighbors they can be. And a lot of that is just ongoing and continuous education for our students about what it means to be a good neighbor, not leaving a mattress on the curb when you leave, you know, how you ending parties at a reasonable hour, you know, kind of the common, what we would call common sense things that we're trying to work with our students, because we are educating them in and outside of the classroom. So we appreciate your patience as we continue that education. The first day of classes is August 18th. The weeks of welcome begin the 16th and will continue through September 6th. Two other quick updates and resources I would point you to. One is our economic development report. We released this back in February. It was done by a third party. And if you just Google Impact 2026 ECU, you'll find it. You'll see fact sheets and full reports for the city of Richmond and for the Commonwealth. So the city of Richmond, we have got an $8 billion impact of added income, and almost 81,000 jobs are supported by VCU. So we're proud of that. We're really excited by that. Statewide, we've got a $19 billion impact, which far exceeds any other institution. And again, 1 in 66 jobs in Virginia are directly or indirectly associated with VCU. So very proud of the impact that the university and the health system have, but also want to wield that impact responsibly. And then the last thing on horrendous behalf, I would say, is the Division of Community Engagement also has an annual report on their website. If it's easier, I can share these resources with STEM. But if you just, you know, Google community engagement at VCU, you'll find their annual report as well. They do incredible work across the city and in our neighboring counties as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions people have and then turn it back over.
Wonderful. Anyone have a question for Alexis about VCU? Okay, wow. I guess I should be warmed up. Thank you so much for being with us.
I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
Has anyone worked with Brenda before? Does everyone love Brenda? Right?
She's the best. That's the best question you could have asked. She is amazing, and I will encourage her to watch this so she can see that.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, next on our agenda, we have School Board Member Katie Ricard to give us some updates on behalf of the second district at the school board.
Thank you, Catherine. Welcome, Katie Ricard, Second District School Board Member. I'm going to focus on 3 things, 2 of which I know have been in the news, that are the 1% sales tax referendum, our budget, and then also just some fun news about some new principals that are in District 2 that we're really excited about. We will start with our budget. As you may know, the General Assembly was late to pass their budget this year due to trying to figure out what the data center taxes would be. And so when the General Assembly published their budget projections were lower than what we had projected for when we did our budget, which left us just about at a $9 million funding gap. We had already cut significantly with our first budget go-round. We eliminated over 46 positions. We, of course, eliminated our virtual school just because it served a small proportion of students. So really tried to trim corners. Moving forward, we are going to have to reevaluate our budget, and we actually have a budget meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. at City Hall that you are welcome to tune into. It's of course live streamed. You are also welcome to attend in person. But that being said, the school board did write a letter to the mayor and city council asking if the unexpected funds from Airbnb could be used to help us cover some of that gap. And they are moving forward with that. And so we are then making up about half of what we need to. So for between 4.7 and 4.8 million. And so once again, we are just so grateful to the city and to city council and the mayor for working with us. Unfortunately, the General Assembly, our senators and delegates really want to support us, but they are now not in session. And so what we are working with them is how to avoid this in the future. I know I've talked about our LCI, which is the local composite index, which determines our state funding. We have a local composite index of around 56 or 57. To put that in perspective, Loudoun County and Fairfax are about 63, Chesterfield is 36. And so what that means is that for every dollar that the state gives us, we essentially have to put up 2 of that. And so that really hurts us, and it, stretches the city's budget. And so we are working with our senators and delegates about maybe how we could do some tweaks for the LCI or other things, maybe get more funding for our at-risk students so that we can have a better budget. All that being said, we are looking at new budget proposals tomorrow. One thing that was potentially being cut was our annual subs in our building. These people provide an immeasurable benefit. It's hard to find subs. I came from Chesterfield, it was hard to find subs in Chesterfield. And so these are dedicated people every day that fill teacher coverage. I will say that thanks to the city's funding, we are gonna preserve those annual subs. That was something we heard loud and clear from our principals, from our staff. Even, like I said, as a former administrator, I was not happy about that. But other things we are gonna continue to look about for next year is what other efficiencies there can be. Are there schools that maybe are low enrolled, and do we need to consolidate buildings? Do we need to look at more contract efficiencies? Are there employees that are maybe 12 months that would be willing to go to 11-month contracts? And that would allow us to save some money. So we know, we are so grateful to the city, but we also know that the onus is on us to keep trying to find ways that we can trim our budget. When the General Assembly, when they passed their budget, they gave the opportunity for all localities to pass a 1% sales tax referendum. And what that means is in the past, only about 9 counties have been allowed to do that. Now everyone can. And so we are, and City Council is beginning to move forward with putting that referendum on the ballot for November. When we talk about a 1% sales tax, what that does not impact is your groceries, your prescription medicines, your hygiene products. So all that will not fall under that 1%. It will allow us to actually capitalize on people that come into the city of Richmond but don't live here. And so projections put that about 25% of that money raised will actually come from non-city of Richmond residents. What that could mean is about $45 million every year for Richmond Public Schools to renovate, maintain, and build new school buildings. I know Fox just got a new school building. It is beautiful, but a lot of our school buildings are very old. Dogwood is over 100 years old, for instance, in the Fan, formerly Binford Middle School. The average age of our schools is 80. The average age of schools in Chesterfield and Henrico are 52. The state average is about 60. So we are behind. Our school buildings, unfortunately, have had a lot of deferred maintenance. A lot need new roofs, new HVAC systems. There is for instance, even at Dogwood Middle School, there's just painting that needs to be done. And right now, there is a dedicated group of volunteers doing that for the school. So I'm going to continue to talk about the 1% sales tax referendum. Please email me with any questions you might have. I really hope that when it comes on the ballot in November, you'll consider voting for it. Our schools need it. Our students and teachers deserve to be in buildings that look as beautiful as Fox across the city, and they're not. And there's also just new buildings that need to be built. The South Side population is exploding. We're going to need new schools over there as well. And before I turn to questions, one thing I wanted to mention was this doesn't impact District 2, but just so you know, some of our students are going back to school on Monday. We have 4 schools that are 200 day. They are Woodville, Fairfield Court, Oak Grove, Belmead, and Cardinal. And so those are going back, and they are 200 day schools. But the rest of us will go back August 24th and August 25th. And so we're excited for that. And when they go back, students at Carver will have a new principal, and that's Miss Tashiana Ivy, and she is coming from Albert Hill Middle School. And we're really excited to have her because Albert Hill students who are at Carver Elementary go to Albert Hill for their middle school. So she knows the families, she knows a lot of the kids, and we're just really excited to welcome her to Peanut Nation over on Lee Street. And then at Fox, we have a new principal and a new assistant principal. We have Mr. Chuck Simmons as the assistant principal. He is coming most recently from Danville. No, he started in Danville, I'm sorry. He's coming from Dinwiddie. But he also spent about 12 years up in Brooklyn as a teacher and administrator in Brooklyn in New York City Public Schools. So we're excited to welcome him. His assistant principal is affectionately known as AP Pie, and she's coming over from Henry Marsh, where she was beloved, and we're excited to welcome her to Fox. So with that, I'll take any questions. Yes.
Do you happen to have an estimate of class sizes under the proposed cuts that it sounds like are coming this fall? And then on the 1% sales tax, my assumption is that that does not cover digital services, correct? Because that was one of the things that I think the legislature rejected this year. You know, if that's something.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The 1% sales tax, I believe it doesn't cover digital services, correct? And that's one thing that I think there was pretty broad support for adding digital services, but I don't think got through the legislature. I'm just wondering if that's something that we've advocated for.
Well, one thing that the 1% sales tax does do is it frees up money in other areas. So I don't know the answer to that specific point, but Katie, have you heard anything about digital
I
services?
haven't, but I can look that up. And then, class sizes, yes.
That's maybe class size.
So, currently, originally when the superintendent presented some proposed budget cuts due to the new shortfall, it was 15 unfilled teaching positions, and so that would mean that we're not eliminating staff because these positions haven't been filled yet. We have asked for which schools that would impact. What they would do is they would try to preserve schools where the class size is minimally impacted. The current budget proposal that just got sent to us maybe a couple hours ago brought that number down to 10. So I don't know exactly. But my hope is that they would pick schools and content areas where if they eliminated a teacher and spread them out, the class size would not grow exorbitantly. My guess is that would then impact mostly our secondary schools when you can really have a larger class size in the middle and high school classroom there versus our elementary.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
So you mentioned there was a $9 million shortfall.
Yes.
And that the budget's already been approved and passed on. Is there an opportunity to go back to the city on this $9 million and try and get it reimbursed?
So we did go back to the city, and because they had already passed their budget, most of the funding has been allocated, but that is why we asked for the Airbnb money that had come after. And so they are giving us that. We are continuing to advocate to the General Assembly that if they come back into session, would there be ways that they could maybe allocate funding? But the issue is, there's no planned time for them to come back.
So, both during the session and with this recent budget change, how have you guys been thinking about what you spend on ed tech, screens in schools, things like that? Has that been on the chopping block?
I love that question. We are just starting to have community conversations about screen time, kind of at all levels. I work closely with the 3rd District School Board Representative, Mr. Farouk. We just held kind of a small group with some concerned parents and the RPS administration, and so we are going to start having those conversations. How much? During COVID, we had to go virtual. We had no choice. And so with that, a lot of apps and other programs were adopted. And our question to the administration is, are these apps and programs still providing the same benefit now that we are in person again? Or is it just better for the teacher to be doing that? So yes, we are looking at that because very well there could be some efficiencies gained if we don't use all the technology.
Thank you.
My understanding was that part of the meals tax in Richmond was
You are correct. I think it's about 20%.
I'm happy to take this one.
Yes, please.
I had a meeting on this today and appreciate the question. So before I was on city council, we passed a meals tax, right? And so that was supposed to help school construction, jumpstart the long overdue new buildings that RPS needed. And where it stands currently is 7.5, right? And so there's that added on top, and then also within that legislation it said 20%. So even separate from even the 1.5 was 20% of whatever comes in from this goes to school construction. And so that has allowed the city and really the school board to borrow more money to get schools started. And then the money that is continuing to come in from that revenue appeals tax goes to pay the bonds for that. And it's, you know, it ranged from the early days of like, you know, $7, $8, $9 million to more like 12. And so I think everyone will be hearing a lot more tomorrow on this topic from administration, so I don't want to steal their thunder. But when we looked at this opportunity of the 1% for school construction, it was because the meals tax wasn't fully meeting our needs. And the state absolutely was not fulfilling our needs. So we were looking for other opportunities. The school board had been asking General Assembly for this tool that other localities had. City Council and the Mayor's Office have been asking the General Assembly for this tool the last 3 years in our official legislative package. So now we have the opportunity to put it out to a vote. I support that. I have had questions, and I don't know if it could be from people in this room. Do you support this layering on top of the meals tax? Because we have a vibrant, wonderful restaurant community, and we know that they are struggling with increased inflation and people not going out as much. So no, I do not support it layering on top of the existing meals tax. I think what we will be hearing from administration tomorrow is how do we balance this new tool versus tools we already have? The ultimate goal is to be as efficient as possible with the dollars we have, and not always going to the same group to fund these initiatives. But sorry, that was kind of a long answer to your question.
That's great, thank you.
Sure.
And actually, I realized I forgot to mention something. One thing that I know constituents have asked me, I know city council is curious, is all about what would be our plan with that money. Now that we would get it, if every year we're getting 45 million, what could we use that for? And so RPS is hard at work at a 10-year master facilities plan of what are we prioritizing. And one thing they do want to do is get community feedback. So in September, they will be doing a meeting in each district for community members to get feedback on what they want for their schools going forward. So I will be sure to put that out. They're still trying to figure out all the dates, but we want to make sure that our community is getting that important feedback.
And then just to close out the topic of the sales tax referendum, that'll be going to council on Monday. If it gets adopted, then it would be on the ballot in November. And the goal with trying to, do this now is that we expect a large turnout in November. We want to hear from as many people as possible what they want to do with this. And then even after that, let's say it does go forward, city council still needs to then create legislation to pass that. So there's some steps between now and then, but it's definitely something to follow, so thank you. Any other questions for Katie? All right, well, I'll just plug again that it's always a wonderful opportunity to volunteer with our schools. So getting classrooms ready for the year is fun. Painting at Dogwood, there are lots of ways to get involved.
Yeah, readers, if you're ever interested in reading in classrooms, we always have that. Just feel free to reach out if you're interested in volunteer.
Awesome, thank you. Next on our agenda, we have Laura Thomas with the Office of Sustainability. Laura, thank you so much for coming. Hopefully folks have gotten to know Laura and her team. They're mighty and doing good work across our city.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you this evening. Again, my name is Laura Thomas, Director of Sustainability for the City of Richmond. We lead RV Green 2050, which is your climate equity action plan. And a show of hands of anyone that has heard of that plan. We have some hands, that's great. those dollars as well. So our first installment went to pay for big support for our composting program, and then the next big ticket item that we're gonna do is we're actually gonna hire a solid waste policy advisor to help uplift a lot of work in that area, from litter cleanups to partnering with our schools and doing education in the classroom to working on illegal dumping across various areas of the community. So we're really excited about that. We anticipate about $400,000 a year in revenue, and we hope that actually goes down, because that would mean less plastic bags. So far, we've regulated or received funding for well over 4 million bags, probably close to 4.5 million bags, just in the city in the first part of this year. So we're really pleased with the progress on that. Just wanted to share that, because that definitely was a really big vote by your city council person. So we're really excited. Briefly, the second topic I want to talk about is related. It is another waste reduction effort. Could I get a show of hands? Who is familiar that on July 1st, just a few weeks ago, styrofoam or expanded polystyrene became illegal in the state of Virginia? Oh, all right, very nice. So the state passed that law for larger larger producers. So if you have 20 units, restaurant units or more in the state, that went into effect last year for you. And if you are smaller than that, that went into effect on the 1st. Now, it is a state-run program. The city is really just here to help with enforcement and making sure that there's a way that we can coordinate amongst ourselves within the city. So we do have a website. If you go to rvagreen2050.com, you can see the foam-free Richmond and foam-free Virginia information. Restaurants can file for an exemption if they have a hardship. They can file it through our office, where we can verify that and list those for you all. And communities can go and report violations if they see that. So again, that's not a local law. That is something that the state put forward, and we are here to help enforce that. But wanted to share with folks. The third item before I get a code refresh that I want to share about briefly is something that we are currently working on. It is in process and has yet to go to city council. It is called a solar power purchase agreement. And what that is actually something that the schools did many years ago, and we are following suit. And it is a procurement vehicle, basically a way for us to receive solar panels on nearly 40 city facilities at no cost to you all, no cost to the taxpayer. Now, these kinds of projects have been going on for years and decades in cities across the country and across the state. But essentially what happens is you partner with a third-party vendor. They have a lot more money than we have to pay for these panels. So they put them on, and then we split the cost savings. And that cost savings is high enough to where they recoup their dollar on that heavy capital investment up front, but the city receives savings the entire time. And so with these 40 facilities, we would receive approximately $15 million in savings over the course of these panels. And that is really important, I think, now more than ever, because of the energy affordability problems that we're having. So if you have Dominion, if you live in the area, we all do, your personal rates went up approximately 14% in electricity this year. That is projected to be 11% on top of the 14% this year. The city actually received a much higher increase, which again, it's taxpayer dollars going to fund this. Our increase on July 1 was 23% in electricity. That was an unbudgeted $6 million. So we're really wanting to get ahead of the affordability crisis, and we're really wanting to lock in these prices. That project is slated to go before City Council for approval on September 27th. So we would encourage you all to write your council member, other council members, and encourage them to actually have my deputy director, she is a certified planner, and she's been working really hard at integrating environmental justice, sustainability, and resilience elements into that. Some of the things that we're really excited to see are the tree canopy standards that have been integrated, and we're hopeful that we can maximize those even more in draft 3 as that kind of volume of work becomes available to us in the coming weeks, so that we can maximize tree canopy coverage on redeveloped sites, and we can collect from those developers a nominal fee on their end to put into essentially coffers so that we can pay for trees. If we're removing them in one place, we can at least replace them in others in the city. Right now, we're also starting to work on a floodplain resilience aspect of that project. So how can we ensure that in our most impacted areas in terms of flooding in the community, we can prevent flooding in family homes. So it's a common concept in other areas, even other counties surrounding us. There's something called a freeboard. You attach it to the bottom of a construction and you raise a home further out of the floodplain. So we're looking at that application for draft 3 as well. So we're working on tree canopy, we're working on flooding, we're working on various aspects to expedite permitting for solar and electric vehicle charging stations, and a number of other provisions in there. So we're really excited about Code Refresh. We have seen a lot of the content and are really supportive, especially of the concept of increasing density in the most important areas, those transit-oriented development areas. That is a critical part because we can all put solar panels on our homes, but unless you have a really dense urban community, that carbon footprint still remains really high. So while we of course support increased housing in many areas of the city, we want to expand that to help address our crisis, our affordable housing crisis. We're really excited to see these environmental sustainability provisions and to see that focus on density in the most important areas. So I am not a land use expert. I am not a zoning expert. I talk to those folks regularly to make sure that I'm understanding how we're moving forward. There's still tweaks to do. There's still work to be done. We haven't received the final 3rd draft, but I'm excited to see that there's so much partnership and collaboration from us internally to get that work done. So I think I will leave it at that, but happy to answer any questions that folks might have. So we got one right back.
Yeah, my question is, have any update on the neighborhood climate resiliency grant? Any update as to when that grant will be awarded?
Yes, absolutely. So the question is, we're changing the name, we're making it shorter because it's hard to remember, right? We're changing it to the Neighborhood Resilience Grant. So our office has $150,000 in grants to give out each year to local nonprofits. I'm happy to say this year we've actually got 2 buckets of dollars. Not only do we have the Neighborhood Climate Grant, but we also have a grant from the Bloomberg organization. It's called the Youth Climate Action Fund. So we're giving out additional grants for projects that are specifically focused on youth-led projects. But both of those, that youth-led one opened, I believe it was last week, and then the larger neighborhood resilience grant opens within the next 2 weeks. So that is we do that on an annual basis and really can fund projects that work on things like flood resilience, green infrastructure, food justice, climate education, really whatever your organization sees as a need within our community, we're open to having that conversation. So if it's youth oriented, it's up on our website now. If it's general climate resilience, that will be open by the end of the month for you. Yes.
Heard a statistic, but I don't know if it's true, that the majority of the trees in Richmond are on private property. Is that correct? And if that's correct, what are your plans for that in regard to any zoning changes?
Great question. So the question is, are the majority of Richmond trees on private property? And if so, how do you address that through the zoning code? The answer is yes. Most trees within the city and within any city are on private property. When you get into more rural areas, that transition starts to change when you have more open land and it goes towards more publicly held trees. So with trees mostly being on private land, and with the city not having any authority from the state to regulate private development, with
come and look at the tree to estimate the cost, and then the landowner has to pay depending on the size of the tree and the footage. It's a tax that they put in to try to maintain tree coverage. And I know if it's a weed tree, for example, my daughter had a weed tree, she had to pay to get it run out, and they said, no, it's a weed tree, that could be removed, but a good percentage of trees that were, beneficial trees, I guess you would say, you have to pay. And it runs up to $7,000 a tree, I think it was, or something she told me.
Yeah, so tree standards in other areas, DC specifically, if you wanna cut down a tree, you have to hire an arborist, a certified arborist. They have to come out and evaluate the tree, pick on species, health, et cetera. Will determine your price and you will pay that down. We don't have that authority in the state of Virginia. The state has not given us, we're in it's called a Dillon rule state, so we can only do what they explicitly tell us in the state. They have not told us we can do that. I worked in Florida before here doing the same work, and we had similar rules. There's actually a downside to that too, is that a lot of times certified arborists will use that law to make a profit also, so there's downsides to it, but, it's just not something that's important to us here. Yeah. Yes.
So it's my understanding that Code Refresh will allow on a parcel us to go from creating 20% of a lot to 75 on an average residential lot, and over 85% of our city's trees are on residential lots. Will you advocate, this is a two-part question, will you advocate to maintain 2 days zoning on build yard percentages to protect our existing tree canopy? And similarly, will you protect the residents of Richmond from being overshadowed by tall density through code refresh with mandatory solar modeling for new builds of 3 stories and taller?
Great question. So one is about preservation of trees and one is about preservation of current solar panels. So it is not afforded to the city to create kind of required solar analysis. That would be a taxpayer funded effort if we wanted to do that on every parcel. So we probably have to hire a couple FTEs to manage that.
There are free ways to do it.
Oh, great, yes, I mean, there's Google Sun and all of these things, so,
Yeah.
you know, just thinking about if that were, say, for my office, I'd have to hire a couple people to go forward and be able to do that for all.
Or if an architect was submitting a site plan, which they have to do for permitting, it's super easy and free for them to do their AutoCAD
Yeah.
synopsis of
Yeah,
solar.
that's very true, and we are not allowed to require that. So, I think one great example of how code refresh really is going to help us create that low carbon density, because the point is, right, we want as much renewable energy, we wanna make sure we're as sustainable and low carbon as possible. So again, to me, the greatest effort towards that is creating that really high density, transit oriented development. That's what's gonna get us there as the city of Richmond.
But that's gonna shade out many neighbors that are in the second district along Gray Street, Leaf Street, Monument, like that's a large part of our district that's here tonight.
Yeah, and I think one great thing that Code Refresh does to balance that, is to make sure that one of the points of zoning is that different uses aren't set next to each other in a way that combats one another, that they work really well together. And so a great example is that PPA I spoke about. We've got 40 parcels coming in that are gonna get solar on them. We had that concern from some internal folks as well, which we thought was slightly unfounded, but we said that's a valid request. So let's go ahead and do the shading analysis. Virtually no impact. And a lot of these are right along these corridors where this density is gonna happen. Because a lot of what Code Refresh is saying is, if you wanna do anything different, you wanna create and maintain the standards of your communities while allowing for a reasonable amount of density to come in so that we can help address affordability. And so that disparity about kind of where one comes in and is adjacent to another, that is gonna really be the areas where you might be more concerned and wanna take an extra moment to look. But then I think also you think about, you know, if there is any impact, it's very minimal. And where there is impact, if you look at your solar contract, a good contract has rights to sun. And that is in a lot of the contracts that should be going forward, and in the past. So a good solar developer typically
go to some folks who haven't asked a question yet. And we also have our guest from DPW. And Laura, I know you're always, make yourself available to come back, and I appreciate that. And I feel like your team is great about responding to questions directly.
Have you actually done a comprehensive shadowing analysis for the city?
That would cost approximately $150,000 and take a year. We have not done that, and that is not a typical approach that municipalities take.
I would say to you, as someone who lives in an area which will be impacted about it, I think that's really important to be done before we make decisions about what we do with code refresh. I think that's a very important component.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'd be happy to talk to you offline. It's not honestly something that I'm gonna advocate for because as a subject matter expert, talking with folks that work on code and solar across the country. I also lead Southeast Sustainability Directors Network. It's the regional network of local government sustainability professionals, and so I help build the standards for these kind of projects. And it's not an express need because there's not a lot of concern on the back end for those impacts. But I'm happy to talk to you offline and kind of, if you want to look one by one at parcels, kind of go through it, we can absolutely do that. That'd be fun. Yes.
Oh, hello. So right now, a lot of tree coverage is based on kind of specific per parcel requirements. And so I'm curious if, especially with the OS designation, which I assume is still there, I haven't seen the newest draft, to create more coherent greenways and sort of meaningful urban forestry from a kind of environmental perspective. So I was just curious, because I know it's been in prior drafts to some extent, but I was just wondering, or hopeful that there's some interest in creating more coherent greenways and so on, rather than sort of ad hoc wherever trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Eco corridors is the term we like to use. Yes, and that's not really a zoning thing. I think that's a little bit of like, my confusion is, where elements of zoning code impact these things and where it actually is determined more about city project planning. So for example, we put in probably 3 multi-million-dollar grants in partnership with our parks team and our DPU team to help create some more of these eco corridors. And honestly, a lot of that's gonna end up being funded by VDOT and being project specific. VDOT projects take 7+ years sometimes to get off the ground. And that's where you get these kind of right-of-way corridors that are able to enable that kind of thing. So code refresh doesn't prohibit that, nothing written in it stalwarts those efforts, but it's also not a tool to help open up those. It's more about allowing certain things in certain areas, which it does. So if you were wanting city staff to focus more on corridor placement, it's really more of a transportation conversation, and then thinking about where are these kind of liminal spaces, where are these often underutilized parcels that could be, say, donated to land bank or other conservation network. That's going to be where that is going to be the most impactful.
Thank you so much. This makes me feel like we need to get our urban forester back to our meeting again. Laura, thank you for being with us. Really appreciate the extra time. And could you share your contact info if people want to reach out?
So it's the trick to the city email. My name is Laura Thomas. So my email is laura.thomas@rva.gov. LAURA.Thomas, THOMAS@rva.gov. But thank you all.
Thank you so much. And we will talk a little bit more about Code Refresh and my updates, but I just want to make sure we save time and don't keep our DPW colleagues out too late. They work hard all day long. Delighted to have with Department of Public Works, Eddie Coggins here to talk about a street signalizing project, which we have several intersections here in the Fan in the 2nd District that will be impacted. So Eddie, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. This is Eddie Coggins. I'm a traffic operations engineer for the city of Richmond. You here?
Yes, we can.
All right. What I'm here today to talk to you about is some intersections in your district that will be affected. 7 intersections. We will be removing the traffic signals from those intersections and replacing those with all-way stops. We signals and decide whether we will replace those signals and upgrade the entire intersection or move to alternative methods such as signal removal and replacement with always stops. Now, we do have 7 intersections that will be affected here. There will be Robinson Street and Gray Street, Robinson Street Park and Park Avenue, Robinson Street Stewart Avenue, Robinson Street and Hanover Avenue, and Marshall Street and Brook Road. These intersections have been deemed aging or failing, so we're going to be replacing those with always stops. And we're looking to start this work in the fall, and it takes approximately, I would say, 2 weeks. The process is we'll cut it on to always stops for like Lincoln Red for like a week. During that week, we'll place the stop signs in place, and we'll also place stop sign ahead stop signs approximately 300 feet from the intersection in each direction to let the public know, which those will be permanent. But also beyond that, we'll have warning signs that will be temporary, that will be beyond that, that will stay up for approximately 1 month. I just want to let you guys know about that. And yes, you have a question?
Question.
Yes.
Okay. While I appreciate the effort to save money, I was wondering about if any research has been done on the safety challenge. Will this increase safety or impact it at all?
Yes, this will increase safety because these are always stops, so all traffic will come to a stop every time at every intersection instead of continuous travel through the signals, which we have now. So it will increase safety for pedestrians and motorists as well.
Am I wrong that a couple of these intersections are also already 4-way red flashing lights, so it's always stops anyway?
Yes, I believe some of them may be, but that is a part of the aging. That's part of the aging signals that we're talking about. So when that happens, we have to look at replacing those signals and how much that would cost the city. So instead of replacing those signals, which some of them may be on standbys or not, we elected to take them out and use always stops.
Thanks.
Is there any consideration for traffic that might be diverted to other streets or intersections, particularly looking at Robinson Street, where you might end up with increased traffic on, Arthur Ashe or Mulberry or Davis, those adjacent streets that'll have an impact?
I'm not sure that it'll have any impact. Are you saying because it's not signalized or because it's going to be always stop now?
I think because it's not signalized, like Robinson is, I would say most people view it as a north-south artery because it's signalized. And if we replace all of those signals with stop signs, people might say, well, I'll just take Davis or I'll take Mulberry or if it's a stop sign, every intersection is all the same, you might have more traffic on smaller arterial roads.
I can look into that for you. We did do a complete traffic warrant analysis, and I'm happy to share that with you. If you want to contact me after, but I'll look into that for you.
Thank you. And just real quick, for folks that came in and maybe missed it on the table, we do have some project snapshot sheets on the table here. Happy to hand these out as well. They go into some more detail about what I spoke to already. I believe there are web pages as well as business.
It's just this, but anyone that is, that reaches out, I'm willing to provide this information as well as the warrant analysis also. And this handout is, we're doing more than just this district, so it includes every district that we're doing for this round. I just wanted to keep that in mind.
So for some of the kind of more frequently traveled roads, like particularly Robinson we were discussing, any plans for any expanded pedestrian safety, like
believe that we do have a plan in place for specifically Robinson. I will have to check. We have an actual engineer that is in charge for that alone, and they do have a list of upcoming improvements that they'll be making. What I can do is check if that's already on the schedule or if that's something that they're going to be looking to in the future to improve.
What kind of engagement or communication is going to be provided to the board? Because this is a very small population of people within the area.
Yeah, so what we do is our Office of Strategic Communication, they will send out media advisories, alerting the public through social media and
Email.
press releases, and then that letting the public know the dates. I would say approximately a week, or at least a week before that we change from fully operational to flashing red. A week before that, so that starts. That we're looking for that to start in like the fall. But there will be media advisories and press releases provided to the general public before any of this takes place.
Yeah, just concerned here. As far as civic associations asking for always stop signs, and I know we go through this traffic study, we've been through 2 traffic studies, but we still have places that we deem unsafe as far as pedestrians are concerned. How do we circumvent the traffic study and let the citizens tell you what the problems are in order to get the always stop signs or a leading left green like at Lombardi and going north and south on Lombardi, so that north and south on Lombardi, so there's a leading left green. There's some concerns here that we have, and we keep getting the traffic studies, and the traffic studies will yield some of them, but what's happening, in order for us to get the process done, we have to send out a series of accidents to say, hey, we need this traffic calming measure there. How do we go, how would the citizens of the civic association, is there a possibility for the civic association to circumvent that traffic study when it's been through that maybe several times, they're asking for traffic calming measures?
Well, that question,
I know, I'll send it to.
Yes.
We can so according to code and regulations, four-way stop signs cannot be used for traffic calming. They can be used in the situation where we have here, but as far as traffic calming, they can't be used. But what they do is when they come out to do a traffic study, they take an evaluation of what's happening in that entire area. And then from that point, that proceeds to how we move forward. And in order to do that, you can also put in a 311 ticket, service ticket. Now, with that, the reason why we ask that you put it into a 311 service ticket is so that we have a tracking device, so that we can always go back and see what we did do in that area and see how many requests that we have for that area. And so we have people in our team that actually go in and they evaluate those traffic evaluations or questions that they have and concerns with that. But of course, for the four-way stop, that is only for this is what we're doing.
Okay, that makes sense, but I know I'm getting ready to go belabor this, but when we ask for traffic calming measures at Carver Elementary School, we get traffic studies over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we kind of say that it's not safe for the kids to go back and forth, we don't know what to do. And so we're not, and I feel as though we're not getting the kind of support that we need to make it safe just for the Carver Elementary School kids. Number one. Number two, then I'm watching people that have mobility issues to try to navigate through my neighborhood, and I'm still feeling though that we're not getting the kind of information or the support that we need in order to make it safer for people with mobility issues to walk through. We have so many people that's on rollators in the Carver community that it's difficult for them to kind of like go from one point to the next point. I know who to send it to.
Yeah, we do, and we have, so to let you know, to just update you, we do have a new department. We used to be our traffic engineering department, and now we have the Richmond Department of Transportation, which is a broader department. So we will definitely, I'll bring that up to
I got my list, trust me.
Been there, done that. Thank you for that question, Jerome. We did invite Director Benson out, and he wasn't able to come this time, but he will be, I think, at the September meeting, so.
I can have his email, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
informed me that any questions they ask today, to answer them at the best of my ability and report back to them, so I'll make sure to do that.
We'll send them the report.
Tell him Jerome said hello, he'll know who it is.
I remember, okay, I need to get started. Is there any, so kind of to what he's saying, is there any interest in something like diverters or modal filters that would make it impossible for commuter traffic to invade some of these places? So like, not every intersection necessarily needs to be an intersection, and not every street needs to go to every other street. And so, yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with modal filters, but it could be, would be some, I'm curious if those are things that are being considered.
We'll add that, I'll add that to you.
Another question, that's all.
Just out of curiosity, if you find that there are an increase in wrecks because of this change, do you put the lights back in?
We will be,
I like lights. I know what I'm supposed to do when I have lights.
Right.
So does everybody else.
okay, yes, we will. We will be, monitoring those specific intersections, after we do that, especially crash reports. I myself, I do monitor those things, so we will be keeping an eye out on it. And if something like that happens, then we will revisit to see what measures we can take to rectify that.
And Penny, real quick on that, we have intersections in the city that have gone through this process before, right? Is there
Yes.
data on what we see from that?
Yes,
Actually, North Avenue and Ladies Mile, actually, they did have a light placed there after so many years, and they decided that was one on the list last year, and that was removed, and they actually appreciate the four-way stop opposed to the traffic light. And then everything is kind of, it's four-way stop.
yes, we've done, Ladies Mile at North Avenue, that was our first one, my first one, yes. But since then, we've done, approximately seven others, in District 1, 3, and 6, and all had positive, impacts. The community really appreciated it because it actually brought all traffic to a stop every time, which helped pedestrians in the area, cross the street and things like that.
So to piggyback off what she was mentioning, I can't recall the details, someone else might. In the block over at Kensington and Robinson, there was an accident, and that's why they added the speed bump. So clearly that was an area where there's a lot of, accidents, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
So, I don't know how this will really help that situation since that was already a problematic area.
So it'll help by bringing traffic to a stop, which will ultimately slow traffic down in the area. The speed hump was put there because of a problem with speeding. That was evaluated, the cause of the crash, speeding was involved, so, those speed humps are put there to slow traffic down, and the stop sign will actually bring traffic to a stop, which will ultimately slow drivers down in the area.
So don't stop signs, don't traffic lights do that too. Stop people.
They do, but they're not always on red, so sometimes you have, I wouldn't say it promotes speeding, but it gives the opportunity for speeding. If you see a green light 3 blocks down and it's still green, you just keep zooming through. When you know it's a stop sign coming, you can only get up to so much because you have to come to a complete stop.
I might just not understand.
Yeah.
But, okay, you've got an intersection with 4 different routes. And they all just stop, and how do they know who's next? Or is it, seems. I mean, it's bad enough when it's just a one.
Yes. Typically, we go to who's there first. If everybody comes at the same time, defer to the right. Defer to the right.
You might need some education to go along with that.
Okay. Okay.
It's been.
Yeah, just real quick, telling you something I'm sure you already know, but if you do replace those traffic lights with 4-way stops, with the increased observance of the 30-foot setback from stop signs, you are gonna lose a lot of parking spaces for the residents of that area of town. So you're gonna be hearing about that as soon as you get it done.
Oh, yeah.
I will take that one, because it's something that we're working on. But yes, that would mean even more lost parking spaces if we stick with the 30 feet. But I will absolutely address that when I get up to the podium. All right, I think those were some great questions. I appreciate it. I know any change is an opportunity to be concerned and worried about what the new thing will be, but we've had many conversations with DPW about this, and you know, I think they have put in a lot of research into it, and my understanding is this is going forward, correct? This is an informational session. I don't get to tell DPW what to do. So these are coming, and we will communicate out as much as possible the schedule so that people know, and work to get your questions answered.
Yes, if you have any more questions, you can send them to Sven, and you can send them to me. I'll get back right back.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much, Eddie. Well, we will start with that 30-foot topic, just since we were immediately talking about stops. Yeah, so currently, the city of Richmond's code has no parking 30 feet to a stop sign. And if it's a regular intersection, it's 20 feet, no parking. Now, when you live in a dense neighborhood with not a lot of parking to begin with, that extra spot really adds up, especially as we're looking at adding more stop signs. And I think we pretty quickly saw when they started to enforce it, what that meant. We got a lot of angry phone calls, got calls from my husband, my neighbors, like everyone was getting tickets. And I think there was, you know, there's absolutely an understanding and a desire that we don't want to see people getting hit. And there is validity to sight lines. But what we saw when we dug into the data was really this enforcement was not on our high injury network. And when you're driving through these dense neighborhoods, Oregon Hill, the Fan, Museum District, you're going slow because you can't count on what's going to happen with the cars coming the other direction. And so what you see in general is people are driving pretty cautiously. And when we, I guess actually we heard about this from a constituent who had lived in Northern Virginia, and they didn't understand why we had 30 feet because it wasn't the norm in the state. So that led us to work on legislation and work with administration to say, look, are we really going to do 30 feet? It seems unreasonable. No one has been enforcing it, really, to date. I mean, sporadically, maybe you'll get a ticket. But if they're really going to start enforcing it, that would be problematic. I don't think it's reasonable. I think what the goal is, let's say it's 20, and that's something that we can all agree on and understand, regardless of what type of intersection it is. You have a sense for where you can and cannot park. And then let's actually mark it so people can see it and they're not guessing it. So we're working on that. It had a presentation in Safe and Healthy Streets. I think folks are nervous to say less is better than more restrictive sight lines. And so that's something that we're struggling with as a conversation with administration. So it's been in our newsletter. We're continuing to work on this. I think we picked up support from 5th District Councilmember Stephanie Lynch because, again, Oregon Hill has a lot of the same issues. So more to come on that one. And I think with that, I was going to do a quick update at Aspen. Our office hears from folks about DPU almost daily with the billing issues that folks have been having. And Sven has been having those direct conversations. So I'm going to let him just provide the latest that we've heard from DPU when it came to them trying to update their billing software. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. And Councilor, just to the last point about the stop sign parking distance prohibition legislation coming forward, that legislation is getting introduced to council on Monday. We are then hopefully taking a month recess on council in August, and so it will not come forward for consideration in committee and then a vote until September. And one of the benefits of that is that we had ample time to talk through the nuances of the different competing interests here with the administration. And to the councilman's point about best practices that we were looking at in our assessment of this, the model that we're looking at is Alexandria, where sort of a similar urban dense typology to Richmond, particularly Old Town. And they have this across the board 20-foot restriction from the intersection of the curb lines, or what normal people call the corner. And they also have an administrative ability for their local Department of Transportation to say, we know and we have the data to support that certain intersections are higher risk for any number of different reasons. It may be higher speed, it may be sightline visibility issues. As was referenced earlier, Kensington Robinson, we know, has a demonstrated history of being higher risk. And so we can actually do additional daylighting at specifically those intersections and then mark and sign for it. Because I think that's been one of the missing pieces. Councilor Jordan touched on the enforcement piece, but also people, it's hard to know if it's not marked and if it's not signed for. And one of our conversations in partnership with DPW is from an operational maintenance perspective, how do we get to a more regularized standard across the board that helps us to also then sign, mark, and otherwise indicate to residents, these are the expectations and standards going forward for that 20-foot prohibition. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, yeah, and we, brought this up with the Director of Transportation, and one of his points were, well, what about where it's already marked as 30 feet? Again, the paper that we're working on allows that flexibility. If you wanna keep it grandfathered in as 30, they have that flexibility to do it. The goal really is to try and standardize across the city in a reasonable way that both makes intersections, reasonably safe, but also realistic to our very dense urban condition. So follow along, please. If you feel like this is a reasonable approach, we would love your support.
Fun statistic for your next trivia night. 87% of all citations for this rule occurred this year in the 2nd District. So you're not hallucinating, it really is Second District. So on the Department of Public Utilities billing front, we have information at the front that everyone should have gotten in the mail recently from DPU, and it covers a slew of different things, everything from new account information and your account numbers, which have changed, their systems migration as they navigate to a new billing and support software system. The good news is that this new system is much, much better, and it is going to provide a lot more tools to residents to be able to do things like start and stop service, check your billing history, take a look and see, do you have abnormal bills that might be cause for concern in ways that previously were all manual or required a call to DPU. So there's information about that. About the calls to DPU, we know and we hear regularly that there are huge call volumes, particularly in this transition period where thousands of people have been impacted. And we know that our current staff workload has been stretched to the absolute max. And so folks are sitting on the DPU helpline for an hour plus 2-3 hours. We've gotten lots of emails with screenshots of the elapsed time on a phone call to demonstrate that. And so one of the pieces of good news there is actually just as of today, I believe, or earlier this week, DPU basically onboarded a new class of an additional 15 of those customer service representatives. They have already seen, just with that new addition, the average wait time as of today dropped to 15 minutes, which I think we want to strive to even less than that, but it's a market improvement. So if you're continuing to have issues as we navigate that transition and getting to that better system, please continue to reach out to our office and we'll get you connected with the right folks at DPU. And hopefully you don't even have to reach out to us because you can do it through your account, or when you call DPU, it'll be a faster, less painful experience.
We do love hearing from you though, so. Thank you so much, Ben. And then we're now, like I said, 7:15. I'd like to spend a good 30 minutes, or I don't know, you guys may have other places you want to go, but I'm going to give a quick update on where we are in the process of code refresh, and then just take your questions. There's tons of stuff going on in the district, but I feel like everywhere I go, people want to know about code refresh, so I'm just going to assume that's probably what we're talking about. So our last district meeting for July is Monday night. I expect sometime in the
Council meeting.
Council meeting, thank you. The next few weeks, sometime in August, we will see what the third draft looks like. And from there, it'll get introduced at council sometime in the fall. It'll go to planning commission. It'll probably also go to land use. It'll come back ultimately to council for a vote. Now we have seen things get slowed down in planning commission, like Richmond 300 was there for a long time. The cultural heritage stewardship plan was there for a long time. But if things move along, we could see a vote this fall at council. I get asked like where are opportunities for community to weigh in. You can still obviously reach out to our office. We've been having meetings with neighbors and community groups. You will also be able to get public comment at planning commission. You can always speak to land use and city council during public comment. So those are sort of like the avenues. I also expect that when we actually have the map, we will have a district meeting and invite our partners in the planning department to come share and talk about it. I've also asked for another work session with council to talk about things like incentives, development standards, and again, just refresh everyone on what the schedule is. So there is a lot going on, but I think we are starting to see the planning department coalesce around something that they feel has consensus across the city. Now, the second district, we're urban, like, you know, it's great. We have a lot of different typologies here. I think we, in general, are a little bit more progressive in our land use ideas. That's not necessarily the case across the city. So I think what we're seeing is administration, the planning department, trying to figure out, okay, what is a step forward that we can feel was worth the amount of effort and community engagement and is reflective of viewpoints across the city. So that's sort of where things are, in my opinion. And I do feel confident that the planning department has been listening to feedback. I think we will see another iteration in this third draft that looks different than the second draft and definitely looks different than the first draft. And I know people will see their feedback in it, and they'll probably also see, you know, disappointment. We're not gonna be able to please everyone. We're a very diverse city, and that's just the reality. But with that, I will pause and just open it up for your questions. And I would like to start with folks who haven't asked a question yet. I will circle around as many times. So like, you'd like to ask a question, I'll do my best to respond, and then we'll move on to someone else, and I will come back to you. I just have to feed my kids at 7:45. All right, thank you.
Councilor, I apologize if you did say this already, if I'm being repetitive, but in addition to council consideration timeline, in addition to kind of one-off meetings, phone calls, if you ever want to reach out to our office to talk about it, we will be hosting additional second district specific, more district-wide opportunities as early as August potentially, so don't go too far.
Usually when he says, forgive me if you already said this, I didn't, and he's just being nice, but I actually did. So I think I got that in there, that we were gonna host our Friends in the Planning Department. All right, questions?
And I'm
Yes.
also happy to pass the mic if you'd like.
I've already, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
Can you just tell me what's going on with the cultural heritage stewardship plan?
Yes, we have been asking for that and asking for it, and I've been very clear, I don't wanna vote on code refresh until that comes through. So it made it out of planning commission, and I think maybe the city attorney's office was just finalizing the paperwork. Sven, when is it being introduced, hopefully Monday?
You can tell Sven said. So the Cultural Heritage Stewardship Plan, for the folks that aren't familiar, is the first of its kind citywide comprehensive planning effort to, as called for in Richmond 300, sort of take stock and inventory of some of the cultural and historic assets across the city, and makes a slew of different recommendations for how the city, through policy, through budget, can lift those up, can invest in those, can protect those, can help tell those stories. And a lot of it has to do with zoning, a lot of it has to do with lots of other things as well. It passed planning commission, they made a favorable recommendation. Ultimately, council has to adopt it. The challenge is that it was after in the queue of a number of other small area plans and things like that that had come out of planning commission and come to council. So each of those takes a long time to actually formulate into legislation. Our hope and the guidance that we've gotten is that we expect introduction of that plan to council also on Monday before the recess. That was still, like with the corner clearance legislation, put it in September for a final vote.
But definitely before code refresh.
100%, yeah.
And at the risk of speaking for other council members, I think lots of council is interested in that and would like to see that happen before.
Thank you.
Yes.
So like, I've been doing parking reform stuff for a long time, and let's say I'm a business and I have this big parking lot, and whenever it's closed, it's empty, right? And I'm like, well, I could just rent out all this extra spaces to local residents or share it with other businesses. But it's my understanding that under the current code, that's not allowed, because it would be an accessory use for commercial parking. So I believe that's the case, and also it probably shouldn't be the case because of all this parking scarcity people are talking
Yeah,
about.
I am not a parking expert, but 100% believe and support shared parking. And I have been writing administration for a while to do a parking analysis and master plan so that people knew where parking was. And then how do we help folks who have parking lots or decks advertise that to folks who need a place to park? And is there some sort of like shared liability? Like what is it that we need to do? Because we've seen other localities figure it out. I have like piecemeal been able to connect businesses with lots with, those, you pay with like a QR code. But it's not a citywide effort. We did, eliminate parking minimums, and there have been some businesses who, had to reserve their parking to meet their own minimums based on older SUPs or older restrictions. But going forward, they should be able to share. Sven, have you heard anything else about parking specifically?
I have heard that reference. I have not personally looked into it, but haven't followed up with planning staff. And these are the sort of detail that we're getting down to as we get to final consideration to make sure that we're, thinking proactively about that. So thank you for raising that.
Sure. It's just really interesting to me how it's such a common complaint. Again, I've been doing this for like 6 years now for a variety of things. And it always feels like an afterthought to address it directly. And, it's not just about upzoning or downzoning, but there are individual reforms that can target it directly. And a lot of these complaints about finding a space just sort of go away.
Well, if you have any, please reach out to our office. We've carried legislation based on things that constituents saw working in other localities. I don't know, Director Thomas, any other thoughts on that, or have you heard anything about parking?
With parking in general, the fact that we've removed parking minimums, I speak pretty loud, the fact that we've removed parking minimums takes away a lot of that conversation about that, so it kind of limits us in that manner actually, but what we're seeing is businesses are still just building to their need, and then those shared spaces are being maximized, so it's a little more anecdotal now that we don't actually have parking requirements for homes.
Yeah, and for folks that aren't aware, people in this room know probably by and large, but 2023, 3 big zoning changes. One of those was to eliminate where the city required for each individual project, depending on the type of project, a certain number of parking spaces be provided. The classic example for our office of this was the Lowe's on Broad and Lombardi. Massive parking lot, very rarely is it totally full, but they were actually restricted from the ability to share those parking spaces because they had a zoning requirement to use them for only their use. And so businesses on the south side of Broad and others could not readily make use of those spaces. Now, there are other complications and restrictions that can get in the way of that, but getting the zoning out of the way was one step of that.
Thank you for the question.
I have a question. Code Refresh has been presented as being affordable housing law system. I mean, that's the way that's coming across, like this is going to be affordable housing. The whole thing is that most studies, they say, it is not affordable housing. Housing prices have gone up. A neighbor across the street from me got a special use permit to go and build a building on the back that was, I think, 1,200 square feet approximately. I might be off on that. And went through all this process and everything, and then she went and contacted different builders, and the lowest price she could get to build that building is $650,000, she told the neighbor.
That is shocking.
No, but that's what she said. Now, maybe it was what she wanted to do, I think it was garage on the bottom and 1,200 square feet on top. And it's because of the cost of materials and everything that is going up also. And my thought is, a lot these areas, it's not going to be affordable housing. And housing prices are going up, they're going to be taking larger lots, and I know you could have an ADU, accessible unit right now, but some people have off-street parking. Overall, it seems like there's going to be a lot of impact in some of the communities. And the other thing is our infrastructure. Our infrastructure, my daughter just sent me a picture right before I came here. Sinkhole on West Groves. And the guy from the city came and all she said was, he said it next, a word that you couldn't say when he was calling it in. But these are some of the problems that we have not been able to address. I know I spent $5,000 because the building behind me had water come in and my fence was literally 7 inches below the alley since I moved in it. And because of water runoff from another building. These are some of the issues that I'm not sure Code Refresh is addressing as far as the impact it's going to have on our infrastructure. My understanding is there's been no studies to address these issues. They've been looking more at density and building and affordable housing possibly, but they haven't done the basic studies. And I was wondering if you heard of any studies, if we could find actual information.
Thanks. Well, we did share the FAQs. I don't know if you found that helpful at all, that the planning department sent back to us. And I know Director Morris was at the Public Utilities Commission addressing the question of capacity utilities that could handle it, and he was affirmative that yes, they can. To your question of affordability, I think, the goal is that we've seen prices go crazy, right? I mean, I think we all know, I'll speak for myself, I couldn't buy the house I have now, but I did. Because it's expensive to build, materials, to your point. Also, it takes time in the city, particularly if you're doing an SUP or anything challenging or complicated. And so part of, I think, the discussion about affordability came from, we want people to be able to build more efficiently, to not get bogged down in the time cost of carrying the project beyond when they would like to start. That was part of it. I always go back to Director Bonk when he says, make it easy for people to build what we want to see and hard for what we don't want to see. And so I think what we saw was that there were people who were priced out, couldn't find an apartment in their price range in the neighborhood they desired, so they would go to a different neighborhood where it was cheaper, push those people out, on and on. And so if we could build more housing, then people would have more opportunities and places to find. It would help slow down the crazy high increase in rents that we were seeing and incredible high increases in sale prices of homes. Now when it comes to, is someone gonna build an affordable house to meet affordable housing needs? I mean, we have affordable housing builders who don't wanna come to Richmond anymore because it's so hard. So, they're constantly having to go through SUP processes, and it just became prohibitive for them. So is it going to necessarily create affordable units? That depends on who's doing the project, right? We want people to be able to do affordable housing projects here and want to come here and do that. We want people to do the addition they want and not have it come out of $650,000 in order for their mother to live with them or for them to have a home office or whatever. So I mean, I think people have brought this up a lot, and I think Code Refresh has suffered from maybe some of the communication and framing from the beginning, that we were trying to sell it as being sort of this silver bullet for all these different things, and it was just, maybe that was asking too much in how we described it. Jerome?
Sure. There's a couple of things that have me concerned as far as churches are concerned. I think I would like to see it remain institutional. I think they're changing that designation as far as churches are concerned, because I don't want to think that all of a sudden, someone buys an old church and decides, well, anyway, that's one of them. The other one would be required, there's ordinance that no more than 3 unrelated people can live in a single-family housing. And I think that ordinance was put into place to stop, and I hope none of you are in here, those landlords that was very unscrupulous. They would just kind of have poor living conditions and then rent those rooms out, living room, dining room, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, basement, whatever they could rent out, they would rent it out. And I like that, I like the fact that that ordinance supposed to have stopped that, number one. Number two, and then my really big concern is living in a kind of historic district, is that I don't think there's enough protections for the architectural vernacular in certain districts. I think we're gonna lose that tremendously. So, especially when you live in I'm just gonna say in Carver, some of the architectural vernacular that's there, because it's 70-30, that 70% is owned by a few landlords or investors, they can come in and tear that down anytime they want, and so that vernacular is gone. And
Okay, so 3 questions. Before you add a 4th, let me get
I'm not gonna-
never forget the first one. All right, so churches, they're now MX3. Remind me.
So, churches.
Yeah.
From the outset in the first draft, the city in their first draft treated churches differently from their surrounding community, recognizing a couple of things. One, churches are bigger, generally, they're on bigger lots, generally, and when you see redevelopment of churches, sometimes the whole building gets torn down, but you also sometimes see adaptive reuse of churches in a way that can be complementary to the community, that can be a really wonderful way to preserve architectural integrity of what are often pretty cool buildings. We can think of examples of that all across the 2nd District where that's happened. And there was also early an interest based on feedback from the community where neighbors were saying, in my neighborhood, I don't have a walkable corner store. I don't have a walkable coffee shop. I don't have a walkable community serving retail. And so the planning department put in MX3 at the time, mixed use 3 stories, to be able to both facilitate multi-unit redevelopment and hopefully preservation of those structures, and also to be able to offer that opportunity for walkable, accessible community retail. There was also pushback on the other end of that, concerns about what kind of retail, what sort of commercial uses would be allowed there, is that always applicable? And so in the latest draft, what is proposed is contextual multifamily zoning, dependent on the context of the surrounding neighborhood. So depending on the density of the surrounding neighborhood, it basically would take whatever is allowed on the next door lot and step that up a little bit, so that you could, instead of maybe a duplex, you could do 4 or 6 or 12 units or something like that, which facilitates hopefully that adaptive reuse also of some of those structures.
And I feel like that is a good example of planning commission listening to feedback. We wanted more housing, right? That was the main thing that we kept saying about this project. And going from that more commercial mixed use designation to a residential designation, I think, is hitting the mark. And we haven't heard a lot of pushback on this. Fatigue is setting in, but yeah. In this room, there are new faces here, which is fantastic. Do people feel like that's reasonable, that a church could be converted into housing and with maybe some limited commercial use?
There's no requirement that it be converted though.
Correct. I mean, no one has to do any of this. This is just what might be possible should that church decide it can no longer support its congregation. We think we saw that on Stewart Circle, right? When they sold their parking lot, worked with West Grace Street for that building.
Yeah, and Melissa, to your point, I think one of the questions that we've asked of the planning department that we've heard from residents is, can we take the same preservation bonus approach that we're taking with residential and apply that to churches? So if you do want to do conversion, there's going to be a requirement that you maintain that structure. And that may not always work depending on the project.
Can I ask a question? With relation to the preservation bonus, I'm not sure if a lot of people understand that that does not apply when you're upzoning a property to a residential multifamily category or to an MX category. So I guess my question is, so an example would be on Grace, or an example would be Strawberry Street, all the small retail with residential above it, that could be torn down and turned into a 3 or 4 story new construction building. what do you think should be appropriate preservation protections for historic neighborhoods that are not Holden Historic Districts?
And before you answer that.
I know, I still owe you the reply to those two questions.
But before you answer that, the question is that with that protection, we still invite density. I mean, for Carver, we have been going through density for the last 20, 30 years. So, I mean, so it's not being opposed to density, it's protecting what's there as you add density.
Correct. And we're already the densest neighborhoods in the city, so.
Well, I haven't seen how they're treating the preservation bonus in this current draft, so I know that you guys and others have been providing that feedback, and I think we will see. And then, you know, equally, I know the FAN is pursuing a demolition overlay district, and there are other tools out there that we're trying to both employ now and also sharpen and make more impactful by going back to our colleagues at the General Assembly. When it comes to the number of residents in a household, currently it's in draft 2 it was 8. It used to be 3. That's what we're all used to, right? 3 unrelated. If you have a huge family, that doesn't count. We're talking about 3 unrelated people, because folks wanted to clamp down on party houses and group homes that were out of control. The second draft had 8. People were not comfortable with that number. Planning department said, you know what, we can't even enforce 3. Why are we trying to pick a number? We should just rely on the state building code, which was 70 square feet per single occupant bedroom, and then 100 for a double occupant bedroom. And so that really scared people, that there would be no limit, even though it might not be legal to create a limit. Trying to find a compromise. I put this in my newsletter. Folks have already read it, I'm sure. If people thought 3 was not representative of the fact that we need to grow as a city, 8 was too much, try to find what is that middle ground, use 4 or 5, something like that. And this is where I would say there's the least amount of consensus from the district. I would say generally citywide, people want to keep 3. But absolutely, you know, second district, 60% renters, there are folks who want to see that go away. There are people and absolutely want it to stay 3. So I'm not sure where it's going to land, and we haven't heard yet, but the feedback has really been all over the place. And people very, very passionate to keep it, and then just as equally passionate that it doesn't make sense. So that one, I think we're still waiting, we're still working on. Yeah. And then, Jerome, do you feel like we touched on the historic preservation in vernacular?
Well, we'll see what it looks like in 3. Yeah. Just one other thing too is that we're talking about SUPs and by rights. I think the department needs to kind of tighten up on the SUP process for themselves, because it's just so difficult to get an SUP through the city, but they're saying, oh, well, you know, it shouldn't take that long to get an SUP done.
Yeah, what I was hoping for is we make the SUP process like an IKEA diagram. Like, it should be really simple. You should be able to figure it out, do it online, and we're obviously not there yet. But I agree with you, it's too hard. It's too hard.
Yeah, Jerome, to that point, one of the conversations we've had, and we've got a lot of interest from the planning department in this, either as part of Code Refresher or as an ancillary project, is looking at how do we tier SUPs to say, look, if you're getting a special use permit because you want to do outdoor dining at your restaurant, is that the same level of impact as I want to build a coal-fired power plant down the road, right? I think we all know the answer is no, but from a legislative and charter perspective, our process is the same. It is necessarily going to be a long process to a degree, because there's a lot of multi-departmental review of every single project to make sure we get the details right, and we don't want to rush that. And there's also the public-facing component of noticing requirements and public hearings and making sure neighbors know what's going on. So if we look at shortening them for everything, we might look at really both pushing that review too quickly and pushing the public to understand what's going on. So that is that balance, but being able to tier those things and kind of disaggregate a little bit more is one thing we've definitely talked about. It's also a challenge that right now we have such a high volume of special use permits for many projects that are not at all incompatible with their surrounding context. context. I think the stat was that a third of all special use permits in the last year, maybe 5-year time window, were for single family homes in single family home communities. And so that demonstrates that our current zoning is completely out of whack and out of alignment with the neighborhoods that we have as of today. And that's a waste of community time, that's a waste of staff time. It could be better even on those tougher ones.
Oh, I thought we were winding down. Okay, final 5 minutes, and I'm gonna start with folks who haven't asked a question yet.
I think some of that extends into duplexes too, so I would encourage, Counselor, by your recent newsletter supporting 2+1 framework, with the duplexes. Hopefully we keep that and go into draft 3. I know it's kind of changed into a preservation bonus, but I've seen the benefit of a duplex. I've lived in a duplex in a single family residential neighborhood. My rental rate was somewhat, to a degree, more accessible than what surrounded me. So I hope we can fight for that and continue to keep that. Some other counselors, I think, are wavering on that, but I'd like to see more of that. I know there's a proposal floating around from some affordable housing developers who are hoping to maybe bring back some more buy right options. So I'd encourage you to look into what Home of Virginia Partnership for Housing Affordability is floating around in that regard. But my street, triplexes, duplexes, a bunch of different housing types. So I'd like to at least see that 2-unit by right continue to be draft. And thank you for supporting it.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else who hasn't asked a question yet? And then we're just gonna, okay, go.
What is up with this referendum push? And assume you're not a fan of that, but curious to hear.
I am grateful that we still live in a country that people can put a referendum out there and go door to door if they want, what they're passionate about. Someone's got a clipboard here today. That's how I got my name on the ballot. You know, direct action, talking to neighbors. I do not support those 2 initiatives. I ran for office to do hard things, and I'm gonna have to take a hard vote when we get to this. And we put in a lot of hard work trying to make sure our constituents knew what was happening, that we knew their concerns, and hopefully, you know, my goal, and I've said this to members here, when we get to that vote, I want everyone to know what was in it and feel like their concerns were reflected and addressed, maybe not 100%, but hopefully 80, 90%, so that they don't have this panic about coming down to council and saying, don't vote for this. I don't support the referendums. They may, I don't know if they will both get the required signatures. If they do, they will be on the ballot. No? When?
So quick clarifier, do folks know about this referenda push in the room? Again, I know we're dealing with some very plugged in folks. There are 2 petitions, not referenda, petitions that are circling around. One you can find tonight in person. They both, at least in part, deal with putting major rezoning questions on the ballot for an advisory referendum before council can take final action. Neither of them, though, even if they achieve their necessary petition signature thresholds, immediately go on the ballot this fall. They both require charter amendments, changes to our basically local constitution as a city. That requires approval from the General Assembly. So not only would you have to get the petitions, you would have to get a General Assembly member, probably a delegation member from Richmond, to carry that legislation, and then the General Assembly would have to vote and approve it. Then there would be, going forward, that threshold established of, I think it's 25% of all parcels that they're rezoned, that has to go to the ballot. So for 2027, if we were to undergo a new, or if we're still considering code refresh perhaps, similar effort, that would have to go to an advisory referendum if all of that happened. But we do not anticipate there are going to be several referenda on the ballot this November. None of them having to do with this question.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Can you clarify for me what the language relating to split lots is about?
Yes, and I'm not sure that'll end up, I don't know if that'll end up in the 3rd, but I think people can, Sven is so good at describing this. I feel like I'm a good writer. I'm gonna let Sven answer this one. Split lots.
Julia, we're talking about sublots or lot subdivision?
Yeah.
One of the things that is proposed in Code Refresh is to make it an easier process for you to create, essentially, think about the parent parcel. You've got a property, you want to parcel off a component of that property and be able to sell that component of the property. What is proposed in Code Refresh would in some cases make it easier for you to be able to do that, with the express goal of facilitating particularly more accessible home ownership opportunities, first-time home ownership opportunities. You could think of, for instance, a duplex that sits on the same parcel, where you can then subdivide that lot into two sublot, or one sublot of the master lot, that can then be sold to somebody else. Or earlier in the consideration process, we were also thinking that you could do that with ADUs. Because everything is massively complicated, the state now has imposed a blanket allowance of ADUs across the Commonwealth. And I think one of the restrictions of that state authority is that you cannot sublot ADUs. So I think that's out of the picture. But what is still contemplated is the idea that nothing would change from the appearance. The same zoning restrictions when it comes to the height and the setback and the step backs and all those different things would still apply to the whole lot. All the buildings on it would collectively have to meet those restrictions, but it would allow for fee simple sale of components of that property so that you can create smaller properties, smaller buildings that are hopefully more accessible to more people.
When you're saying that, I understand everything, but alley, would that, if you divided the property in the back part, because right now I understand it has to be a frontage on a street, and that's one of the questions that I have if you're dividing that property and it's the back.
That remains.
Yeah.
So one of the early questions we had was, are you gonna be able to do a principal structure that faces an alley, not the principal street? And the answer is no.
So you would not be able to sell that part of your lot?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This is difficult for historic neighborhoods.
It is a very difficult topic, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why I don't think it should be something people vote on the ballot. They're gonna go vote for the president, and they're gonna come in, and there's gonna be a question about zoning. And just for me, like, I absolutely understand the desire of why people, are spending time on this, but like, for me, knowing how much effort we put to try and educate on this, I just think it's too complicated for a ballot vote, and I'm just being your voice, so.
By contrast, right, we had a referendum for the casino. As complicated as that topic was, it was a lot more simple than a comprehensive zoning reform, right? People could understand what a casino is, they understood where it was going for the most part, they kind of understood some of the details around it, and they could vote yes or no. A yes or a no on Code Refresh, as an advisory referendum, doesn't send a clear signal to decision makers on council. It could be no because it doesn't go far enough, it could be no because it goes too far, right?
Right, last question.
So, I appreciate all the work you're putting in, and all these meetings are great. I just would encourage you to take the time, if we need to do a study on environmental, someone asked about, or if we need to do a study on fire and safety, is it safe for leaving up fire trucks or whatever, take the time. I think the citizenry would appreciate taking the necessary time. It doesn't have to be rushed, that would be only my own comment.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey.
How's it going?
All right.